Well, good morning, WellHouse Church. Pastor Cullen here. Excited to be back with you for another week of storytelling. Why don't you grab some food and some coffee and come join me? I'll be honest, this text is quite troubling for me. We're in Acts chapter 6. And if you've been around church for very long, then you know that this is the passage that the concept or the office of deacon comes from. And if you were going to set up churches in a traditional manner, you would need deacons. You need the office of someone who is going to serve. My problem with this text is the way in which it's set up. It ends up being very hierarchical, as if there are people at the top and people at the bottom of some kind of chain, a hierarchy, which I don't like because the way that the apostles ground it is quite troubling. So, long story short, what ends up happening is, as the story of Acts is unfolded, all of these people have been living together in some kind of community. It doesn't really explain how they're all sleeping and continuing to live, but we know that they're all living together in some kind of oppressed community, where they're living according to a common purse, and lots of things are happening. But when it comes time for the deacons to be started, this is what the text says. And the 12 called together the whole community of the disciples and said, "It is not right that we should neglect the word of God in order to wait on tables." Is that not right? Is it not right that someone would, quote unquote, neglect the word of God in order to wait on tables? Actually, if you've read the word of God, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. We should be serving. We should be waiting on tables. And I'm not real sure why these people thought they were above doing that, if I can be honest. And their final, they select men from amongst themselves, which I also find to be quite troubling. Why must it be men? Very, very strange to me. Very, very strange to me. And then they choose these men, and this is what the text says. "Therefore, friends, select from among yourselves 7 men of good standing, full of the Spirit and of wisdom, whom we may appoint to this task, while we, for our part, will devote ourselves to prayer and to serving the word." I don't really know what to do with this Bible text, if I'm being honest. It's not the most kind display of Christian leadership and authority. People at the top have a job that they don't want to do, a job that requires some uncomfortability, some conflict management. And they don't want to do it. They want to pray and read the Bible, specifically the Old Testament, and the New Testament's written. This is quite problematic. The tradition that I grew up in would use texts just like this to say that pastors have some kind of additional moral obligation or authority over others, and they shouldn't have to serve, if that makes sense. Yeah, no. We're not doing that. This book is absolutely given over to the idea that each and every one of us should be serving and waiting on tables and doing things for others. We should all also be praying. We should all be learning the scriptures if that's a way that we find formation. We should all be doing all of those things. But it bothers me to think that there's some kind of requirement that I, as a Christian person, have more right than you to do something. If that makes sense, I find the whole thing to be very troubling. I don't really like any of what this is communicating other than the important fact that the widows need to be taken care of. That truth through this Bible text maintains true. The widows, the orphans, the vulnerable, the oppressed need to be taken care of. The thing that I don't think stands true is that I somehow am above serving and waiting tables. I don't think I'm above waiting tables. I don't think you're above waiting tables. I don't think any of us are above waiting tables. And in fact, my largest problem with this story is that their reasoning why they shouldn't have to wait tables is that they have to devote themselves to the Word of God. If you really read this book, you would know that our call is to wait tables. And so I don't know what to do with this. I want this story to be beautiful. I want it to have a great message. Unfortunately, it just doesn't. It has a message tainted by hierarchy and power, which ruins some of the beauty. It just simply does. There's no way around it. And so, WellHouse Church, here's what I would like us to commit to together. I don't think, not even a little bit, I don't think that there should be a hierarchy. I don't think I'm exempt from serving tables. I don't think you are exempt from serving tables. I think we as WellHouse Church should commit to the truth that we live in a community. Your community may look a little different than this community, but we live in a community where there are oppressed peoples, where there are vulnerable peoples, where there are people who need a little bit extra. I want us to acknowledge that we live in those kinds of communities. I want us to acknowledge that in any kind of Christian tradition or positioning, if you will, at WellHouse, no one is above waiting tables. No one is against serving the vulnerable people in that community that we serve and live in. No one is above service. We all should be serving. And as we take care of the vulnerable, as we progress down this road of caring and serving, what we will find is that we are taking care of the Word of God. That I don't have to sit here and devote myself to prayer and to the Word of God, because the Word of God has already spoken. The Word of God was revealed to me in the story and person of Jesus. And oh, by the way, He served. He washed feet. He served tables. He healed people. He was present in a hurting community. And so, WellHouse Church, I want to ask you, how can we as a community of people be present in our own communities, serving and waiting tables for the vulnerable in those communities, so that we might express living out the Word of God?